Well, why don't we call the meeting to order?
See how for vacation?
I don't know about
Roll call.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom,
Here.
Mr. Dance,
Here.
Mr. Bell,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili, Ms. Goodman, Mr. Hawk,
Yes.
Okay, does everybody have a chance to look at the agenda for today? If I can get a motion for approval of that agenda,
Motion to approve the agenda?
I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Great. Any public comment today? Nobody's here. And Mr. Berlin, Joe, welcome.
Glad to be here.
With our audit review, the floor is yours, sir.
All right. Thank the board for allowing us to serve as your audit firm. We went through and reviewed the revenues and expenditures and assets and liabilities, and we're able to get comfortable with the financial statements, and accordingly, the most important item that we provide is our opinion, and that's on top of page 2. And we state that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the authority as of September 30, 2018. It's a clean opinion, an unmodified opinion, so it's the highest level of an opinion that we can provide on financial statements. It basically means that the financial statements that are being provided to us are able to be substantiated with all the supporting documents. We obviously work with the county, we work with the banks, various institutions, and to make sure that we verify everything. And accordingly, we got to the clean opinion. But again, it should always be the authority's goal to get to the point where you have the clean opinion. I won't go through every single page of the audit. I'm just going to cover some of the financial highlights. The first section that I take the readers through is starts on page 4. It's the management discussion and analysis section of the audit, and it gives financial highlights, comparative financial statements, so you can see how the report looked in 2018 compared to 2017, just to get an idea of what the trend looks like, and also explains how the various financial statements relate to each other. So first, financial highlights. First bullet point on page 4 shows that the assets exceed the liabilities by $7,474,207. And in the corporate world, we would call that equity. So theoretically, if we were to sell all the assets, pay off all the liabilities, there'd be about $7.4 million left over. It's a theoretical number, but we do like to see that number trending up over time. Of that $7.4 million, $620 is unrestricted net position. So the vast majority of it is either tied up in infrastructure, runways, buildings, equipment, or in restricted assets. So $620 is the unrestricted amount. The second bullet point down looks at revenues and expenses. So revenues that came in during the year were $2.7 million compared to about $3 million. Altogether, there was a decrease or net loss of $274,000 approximately during the 12 months ended September 30, 2018. And the last bullet point, if we take the unassigned fund balance, which is also the unrestricted net position, $620, and we divide it by the total expenditures, it's down to less than 1%. So that general fund unassigned fund balance is a very low level as of September 30, 2018. In talking with Rachel, financial statements are being provided monthly to the board. It's important to make sure that those are being closely monitored. We have to make sure that revenues exceed expenditures to prevent there from being a deficit for the year ended September 30, 2019. There's not a lot of wiggle room there, so it's going to be imperative to make sure revenues exceed expenditures in the upcoming years. One of the things that Rachel and I talked about before our meeting was getting together with the new finance officer and just reviewing and comparing the trial balance from the county to the trial balance from last year's audit report, making sure everything's in sync, and making sure that we've got a good starting base within, just verifying that what you guys are seeing on a monthly basis is accurate. And we don't want to have to worry about the auditors coming in and making some type of a year-end adjustment. We want to know that what you're seeing every month is correct, and we're properly identifying revenues and expenditures. We just can't afford there to be any surprises. So that'll be something that maybe towards late July, early August, I think it's worth investing some time to make sure we've got a nice clean slate, and everything that you're reviewing is accurate, timely, throughout the course of the year to prevent any surprises, just given how close that fund balance is to being at a deficit level, so.
Your question, that 273,000, that's, if I read it right, that's mostly depreciation, so
Yes.
it's really a moot point, right?
A lot of it is non-cash, so it doesn't
Okay.
mean that you guys are spending $273,000 more than you take in. So we are expensing infrastructure. If you look at the very next page, page 6, you get a better idea of what the true change was. So the very bottom line, the unrestricted net position decreased from $30,313, 2 rows up from the bottom at 2017 to $620 as of September 30, 2018. So it's not like the airport needs to figure out a way to cut $275,000 out of its budget. It's more like $29,000 or $30,000 was the amount of additional expenditures over revenues. That's the number that we need to make sure is at least break even, ideally a small surplus for the 12 months ending September 30, 2019. Next, if you turn to page 7, we're still looking at the accrual basis of accounting. So these numbers include depreciation. This is the same basis of accounting that the corporation would use to value its change in equity. So in 2017, there was a decrease in that position, 3 rows up on the bottom, 289,000. There was a decrease in 2018 of about 274,000. The vast majority of that is depreciation expense. And now, if you turn to page 12, we get a look at, this is the fund balance sheet. This is what you're going to see in your monthly financial statements. This is the same basis of accounting. This is the modified accrual basis of accounting. Everything is being more cash basis. So what are the immediate resources that the airport has at its disposal compared to its immediate obligations? And we're backing off infrastructure. We're just looking at cash, very short-term receivables compared to payables and any balances that might be due back to the county. And this is where, when we back off the difference, we get to $620 of unassigned fund balance. And if you turn 2 more pages to page 14, now we see how much cash came in during 2018 compared to cash that went out. And 4 rows up from the bottom, we can see that the expenditures exceeded the revenues by $29,693. That's going to be the number that you would see in the BSNA financial statements produced by the county. And that's going to be the number that we need to make sure is break even, if not positive, during 2019. And again, so we see the fund balance at the beginning, or as of September 30, 2017, was $30,313. After the decrease, $620 was the remaining fund balance. Now if you turn all the way to page 26, that's the last page of the financial statement audit report. And there's actually 3 different reports that we include when we do the airport audit. So if you turn now 9 more pages, we get into the federal single audit report. The page numbering starts over, it'll be called page 9. And this is just a quick summary of the federal expenditures. So not only did we provide an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, if you look about halfway down the page, we rendered a second opinion on the federal awards. So there's up to 12 different compliance requirements that we need to assess when we're looking at the federal funds that go in and out of the airport. And then we provide an opinion on the effectiveness of internal controls over those compliance requirements. So in other words, various strings are attached to those dollars. Has the airport designed suitable controls to make sure that those compliance requirements are all being met? And we did issue an unmodified opinion on controls over the federal expenditures. So a clean report on the federal controls. There was no modification of the opinion. Now if you turn to page 11 of that, and then the page numbering starts over again, we get into the PFC reporting. And on page 1, we get a quick snapshot of all the various PFC funds that have been approved for use, how much have been expended, and then what the current year change was. So we looked at $21,582 of PFC expenditures. It didn't have any material non-compliance to report on the PFC activities. So not only do we provide a financial statement audit, in addition to that, we have a federal single audit and then a PFC audit as well, that the Department of Transportation has thrown in as an additional compliance requirement that we need to take a look at. So those are the highlights that I had, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
So it's a clean audit.
Clean audit.
Well, there's one thing that we had a shortcoming, but it's been adjusted, right?
Yeah, so we did have
That was on the-
3 items,
Right.
and 2 of the 3 have been addressed. The third one being, what happened is we came in and we proposed adjusting journal entries to get the trial balance entirely prepared for the audit. For that reason, because we assisted in preparing the trial balance, we're required to put that in as a finding, but it's a disregarded finding. So when Treasury sees it, they don't require any type of corrective action on it. It's just something that we need to convey to the readers, that we provided some level of assistance in preparing these financial statements. And I think, that's something that, once the finance officer is hired, something that Rachel and I and the finance officer can talk about is what are some additional strategies that can be implemented to eliminate the need for us to record those year-end trial balances. It certainly cuts down on the audit effort if we're not digging into the numbers and providing adjusting journal entries. In addition to that, we also talked about some strategies for splitting out the PFC funds. Maybe it makes sense for the board to consider a second fund for the PFC activity. We spent a significant amount of audit effort looking at the PFC funds because it's kind of blended. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's hard for us to identify the PFC activity, whereas if it was sitting in a separate fund, I think it provides a little bit more transparency to the board to see that activity in a separate fund and know exactly what's going on with the PFC activities versus your general operating activities. So there could be some benefit to breaking that out, and it would certainly cut down on the audit effort as well. If we just had one fund with all the PFC activity in it instead of a blended fund with general operating and PFC activities included. So I think there's some areas that can be improved, but nothing that would rise to a level where we need to modify our opinion because of it. So
What's the status on getting the county paid back on this loan? Because there was some pretty solid guarantees that things are gonna happen within about a 3 to 4 month time frame, and I don't know if that's transpired, so.
So we submitted the grant reimbursement for that 4, 5, probably 6 weeks ago now. I probably 3 weeks ago had a conversation with the state, and the person whose desk sits on hadn't looked at it. But now she's getting pressure from within that organization because they need that done so that.
For the fiscal year, probably.
Well, that, and it frees up other things for other projects that need to get done, so the person who's been dragging their feet is aware. One of the things I have in my report is when she did finally look at it and kind of put it through, the requested amount is about $6,000 more than the grant amount was originally for. So she sent me an email back saying, oh, should I put in a grant amendment to do this? And I said no, because A, that will just add time, and B, there are other expenses that we haven't yet submitted, like legal fees and the relocation costs. And the state's not gonna wanna do 2 grant amendments on this, so I just said, no, let's wait until everything else is in, and then we'll do one final amendment, short pay our request by that amount, so we at least get the vast bulk of the money back. And that was probably about 2 weeks ago now, and I haven't heard anything since. So, it's going through the state bureaucracy.
See you tomorrow.
Any more questions, anybody?
Just a comment that when I was reading through this, on page 26, where you itemize the budgets from 2017 and 2018, I got a comment here, very good. We did a great job, guys.
to take that $600 and have a party.
I know, that's free money right there, that's what I'm saying, that's free money. So anyway, yeah, I thought it was quite an interesting report, and a good report, good layout.
I'll add just one comment, and I really appreciate the work Gabriel has been doing, because in the 10 years, 11 years that I've been in this position, I've noticed a continual process of improvement. And I mean, I think really 2 years ago, when you really started looking at our assets, which is the bulk of what's on there, things that hadn't been looked at in forever, like, whoa, why has no one ever asked me these questions before? So I really appreciate your role in educating us and making sure that we've got a good process. So.
Sure.
Maybe we should follow your recommendation on the PFC fund to break out the various expenditures like that. I don't
Yeah,
think it's a
definitely
lot of
more
work.
visibility.
Pardon?
I think we need to investigate that. I think there are a couple things that all kind of come together because of how we use that as our capital improvement fund. And some of the funds are PFC, some are not PFC, and how we want to really accomplish our goals as well as that. But because of how we've done our PSC application, where we applied for basically reimbursement on money that's already been spent in the past, basically as soon as we get those dollars, we can transfer them to our general fund because they've already been expended and it's just a reimbursement. So it would be pretty simple to set up a separate fund and account, but balance would basically be zero most of the time. But then how do we track what we want from an operational standpoint of creating our capital improvement fund that's separate from our general fund, so that we understand, do we really have these dollars to do these projects or not, or is the capital improvement fund subsidizing our general fund? And, you know, there's a lot of issues there, and they're all kind of tied. But yes, I think it is something. Rachel and I have talked about this on a few occasions about ways, and you've actually last month she started making some changes, and I saw some things this month that we had talked about that are in there. So, you know, I think Rachel's already guiding us down a path to make sure that you're better aware as to what our real position is, because that $620 number really should strike fear to everybody. And we've been operating like that's not the reality, because what we're seeing doesn't really show that stark bottom line.
Well, the way things run here, you almost confuse the county as the bank. Within reason. I don't want to upset the auditor, but that's, in reality, that's
we
it.
have borrowed
the
money
underwriter of the check.
unofficially from the county to
Because it's
cover
not your own
things.
little world where you just go,
Right. Yes. So from a cash flow perspective, that is the case.
no.
But
All right. Without any other questions, we don't have a motion or anything for, it was just a report, correct?
did
Well, we do need to accept the audit report.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
I'll support it.
Probably roll call for that.
It doesn't hurt, doesn't hurt.
Mr. Hawk?
Yes,
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes. Joe, thank you very much.
All right, good, glad to be here, no problem. I'll see some of you tomorrow.
Are you spending the night?
Nope, I've got a few other places to be, and then kids activities at home tonight,
Is
so.
that your private jet out there?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Is that a private jet out there? Or is it ours?
I don't think it's ours.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a
thank you, goodbye.
Sure,
About
yep, see ya.
20 places?
One, there were three of them out there when I got here.
Really?
There's a dandy out there, that's for sure.
No, that brings up, I know it's early, but let's take it here. We were talking about Mr. Postma, I think it was, who's a billionaire, I guess, in Grand Rapids, owns the,
Bluffs.
yeah. Maybe we should be thinking a little bit about putting together some sort of a package to improve the airport here. which would be a better position for him too. It'd be nicer to have a really nice airport to come into, nice hangars, et cetera. So I'm thinking maybe we should try to put together something, some sort of a package.
Well, I know we talked about that in our budget meeting. We can come back to that, hold that thought. Let's go to approval of minutes. Do we have a chance to look at the minutes from last month's meeting?
I will say this, any board I'm on, this is the board that generates the biggest minutes. And I appreciate it because we actually include the documents in the minutes, whereas most organizations, you've got to pay them if you actually want to see a copy because you have to do a freedom of information request to see a document referenced in their minutes. I really appreciate how we do things here.
Well, then don't change it. Yes, it's good. You know, that's tough.
It is the most detailed set of minutes of any board.
Mine, it's weird, but it's quite informative. And I will make a motion to approve last month's meeting minutes as presented.
And do it a second.
A second that?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, treasurer's report for May. First item up is the accounts payable.
Does anybody need a copy? It's the same as what was sent out, but I do have copies if anyone needs one.
Barry, I see that our catch-up with you is listed in a couple different areas here, correct?
Mm-hmm.
3 spots, which is good.
Yep.
So everything we passed last time went through.
Mm-hmm.
So we're square on everything now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
Are you taking your wife to dinner tonight?
He's taking us something there.
She's actually in New York for the next 10 days, so.
There we go. That's gone.
So that makes it easier for him to take us out.
What's ADB Safegate America Supplies? What is that?
Trying to,
Which one?
Oh,
That's,
yeah.
ADB Safegate America is,
I think, are you looking at last month's in the minutes?
and this is April,
So May.
or in May, okay, forget that.
well, now that because I was trying to find it on the report, so
I think we.
ADB,
Right.
it is basically parts to replace our lighted windsock that is part of our
Yeah,
lightning strike insurance claim of last fall,
Okay,
so.
well, I'm glad I brought it up.
Now, the thing you have to ask about is zero fill testing. Probably an annual requirement.
No, this is a, last fall, I got a letter from the state. I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna call them DEQ. I know they're legal now, but it'll take me forever to be able to say that with a straight face. So DEQ sent out a letter basically notifying everybody who has underground tanks that there's a federal requirement to implement a set of things, and the requirement deadline was before the letter we got from the state. But the letter from the state said, oh, if you do the following things, you can get an extension. So we contacted our, basically the company that kind of does work on it, and said, can you come out and tell us what we need to do? And they came out, and this overfill testing is part of the new requirements, and we don't actually have an overfill system that's correct or current on our tanks. So we're going through the process of getting that installed right now. And when they were here, they did what they could. We needed our electrician to install a couple things in the terminal, which might have happened on Saturday when he was here. I haven't gone through his checklist yet to see if he got everything I wanted him to do on Saturday when the electrician was here. But they have to come back out, tie the pieces together, do a certification, and then we can submit the necessary paperwork to Eagle. so we're in compliance.
Now, is this overfill on the storage tanks or overfill when you're filling an aircraft?
It's on the tanks themselves, so when
Okay.
you're taking a fuel delivery, and
Okay.
you've got a truck out there with potentially more in it
Right,
than fits in the tank, and because of gravity, you've got it basically going in, there needs to be mechanisms that shut flow off if the tank gets full, so it doesn't just overfill the tank. Not an issue that you generally have when you have above ground tanks, because you don't have gravity working in the same way.
The zero turn mower, that's an in and out, right? That's the approval we got last month for.
Yes, and we've already submitted the grant reimbursement for that, so hopefully next month we'll get that.
And was that for the full amount?
Was
Was the grant for 10,000?
No, the grant
Up to?
was, I think the grant was for 8,000
Oh,
with
good.
we had a 10% contribution on that, so.
And I heard it's here, I talked to the guys at
Yep.
Training Creek and everything's.
Yep.
Every day. Good.
Now it's just a matter of training everybody to use them.
now the firefighting, was that with the FOS requirements or?
No, this is just our annual
Okay, this is
training,
not-
recurrent training,
not under the FOS
and
yet. Okay,
the state will reimburse us up to $2,000, and we also submitted that this past week. And when we submitted it, they responded, "That's all you spent?" Because we try to be efficient with our resources, so we're the only airport that like sends our people to a different airport to get trained. So, we didn't even spend the full 2,000 of the grant, so.
okay, good.
Good.
Now,
Now,
the stroke
we-
control kit, that
We,
refers-
just back on that training, we will next year spend the full amount and then some, because next year will be our, every 3 years, we have to basically do a full-scale exercise, so we kind of bring the trainers here as opposed to visiting somewhere else, so. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, I was just gonna say, the stroke refers to a mechanical deal on a jack, not for people with strokes.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions on the accounts payable? Approval. Get a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to accept the May 2019 accounts payable report as presented.
Have a second?
So moved.
Roll call.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Bergstrom?
Yes.
Mr. Hawk?
Yes,
And the 2019 revenues and expenses for May.